It's the ghost of Billy.
It has to be.
Cool. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Chasing Billy, pre-recorded version. I know we've been doing a lot more live versions lately than the pre-recorded stuff, but um, joining me today is Josh Slatten, and we were thinking about talking. There goes your camera again.
He's back.
Josh's camera mysteriously moves every time we do a Chasing Billy episode. Um, but we were talking about next live show, talking about the Greathouse Ranch and going over some stuff. So we thought we'd do kind of a pregame,
Yeah.
pre-recorded footage video and discuss it a little bit and kind of give folks some context so that we can kind of dive right in on our live show on Sunday. So
Yeah.
that being said, man, if you just want to talk a little bit about what you gathered us all here for today.
One of the last pre-recorded ones we did, God, it's been a little while now that I think about it, was we did Coyote Springs, and we talked about that site, and we showed photos and videos, and then we kind of left off there. As everybody knows, the gunfight at Coyote Springs took place, I guess, November 23rd, 1880. And so that'll pick up again on November 24th, 1880. So basically, after the gunfight, everybody went into White Oaks. The posse went back to White Oaks. And then, of course, Billy Wilson and Rudaball on foot went back into White Oaks, which would have been about a 6-mile walk in the snow. So probably not the greatest thing. So on November 24th, we know that Billy Wilson, of course, Billy the Kid, and Dave Rudaball on foot made it back into White Oaks after the gunfight at Coyote Springs. And again, that was about 6 miles hike in the snow, so that doesn't sound real pleasant. So we know that on November 24th, they came back into White Oaks. They went to the Diedrich West Stables, which of course was a safe haven for them. Reloaded up and of course headed out of town after that. Well, we do know also that some gunshots were exchanged between more than likely Billy, but one of the three of them took a couple pot shots at the town mayor, actually. Redmond was his name, sorry. So they actually took a couple shots at him. As the story goes, basically the entire town came out after Billy and his guys and flooded the streets and took pot shots at him. And, as Billy and Rudaball and Wilson left town. Anyways, so they went north. A posse was formed after that. And, considering there was a pretty heavy snowstorm, it was really easy to figure out where they were going. The tracks led north. So this brought basically everybody to what we know as Greathouse Station, which is, there's a book printed out in the 50s called Whiskey Jim. And it's about his life and basically the Greathouse Tavern or station, whichever you want to call it. That's located about 7 miles south of present-day Corona on private property. So, anyways, we can get into the history of all that when we do the live show Sunday. But I just wanted to kind of use this opportunity to show everybody what the site looks like, and to kind of give some groundwork, I guess. That way, when we have a pretty big audience on Sunday, they can have a good idea what we're talking about, and give us their thoughts and opinions on the incident, because there's so many different theories behind what happened that night, or actually that morning, I guess. And so I want to get into that. So when I started doing this research on the Greathouse Tavern, I kind of wanted to reconstruct what it actually would have looked like. So I had our good friend Larry Gosser. I got with him, and there's some historical documentation about what the structure looked like, and it was pretty well described. So I think I sent you that image. That way we can kind of give everybody an idea of the visual of what the building would have looked like at the time. So I had Larry draw that up, and again, there's several really good descriptions of the building, of what it looked like. So we know that there was one room to the right, which we have drawn in there, which is where they stayed at. And to the left was actually the tavern slash saloon slash restaurant, whatever you want to call it. There's actually an exterior building as well to it that's not depicted here in this diagram, but here in a minute we'll show some pictures of it. And then there were two corrals that one was adjacent to it, and then another one was about 200 yards off. So just for the sake of showing it in this illustration, the illustration shows the corral probably a little bit closer than what it was. But yeah, both of them would have been to the viewer's left of the tavern, which again is what we see here. And we know it was a single dwelling structure. They said it was built like a fortress, is how it was described.
Huh.
Um, on the actual foundation that we see, it looked like it had a rock foundation, but we also know that it was built out of some lumber as well, one account says. So that's about the best rendition of it we could come up with. So that kind of gives people a little bit of an idea of what it would have looked like back in the day.
And would this be the wagon road right here? Like if you were on the road, would you be passing it?
Sure. Sure, yeah. So the wagon road would have run right where your mouse is. They called that the
Yeah.
Las Vegas to White Oaks Road. So just a little bit of backstory. Greathouse, again, came from the Texas Panhandle, and he ended up setting up shop in Anton Chico was his main base of operation. And then, of course, seeing the opportunity when White Oaks sprang up, he created this second roadhouse, whatever you want to call it, on the White Oaks to Vegas Road. So this would have been about 40 miles as a crow flies north of White Oaks. So, but yeah, this basically just served as a way station. Basically, he was not known as being an overly honest guy. He was pretty much ran out of the Texas Panhandle um, when when they were looking into him just shy of this incident. He was, he was known as not being a really good guy. He was not viewed well amongst the community. And when I say community, pretty much the people of White Oaks, and everybody knew that it was basically I think a robber's roost is how it was described by some in the local paper.
So out in the
Hmm.
movies,
Hmm.
such as Young Guns 2, it's always a larger structure. So I think in our
Yeah.
collective headcanon, we think, we tend to imagine a larger structure. I know when I imagined it, I pictured something about like this, only probably slightly bigger, but still one story with maybe like a more of a
Hmm.
wraparound porch or something.
Right.
But I think anybody who would see something like this would think it's a lot smaller in reality than what I pictured in my head. And would this? I mean, how many people would frequent this place? You said like on the left side here, this would be the
Hmm.
saloon section, like the just the general common area.
Correct. Yes, sir.
And then
Uh,
this is kind of like a lodging area. Like, would people stay here like a one room rented like an inn, or would that
well,
just be for Jim?
my understanding is that's for Jim, and of course there was another guy named Cook that operated Fred Cook that operated this as well. So my understanding is that one room was where they stayed at, and then the rest of the establishment operated as the store, saloon, restaurant, whatever you want to call it. As far as how
Right.
many people there go, we have one account. So when the cook Joe Steck and I think I'm pronouncing that right,
Mhm.
Steck, when he came down, he actually came down from Colorado about 2 weeks before this incident occurred, and so we have his account of the gunfight and all that. And then, thankfully, because of him, that's really, he's kind of the primary source for what all took place. So when he's describing this incident, he backtracks it a little bit by a week or so when he's given his interview later in life. And he says that he actually came down, and when he first came to the establishment, he said there were 7 to 10 cowboys inside there. Again, I don't know, drinking, functioning, raising hell, doing
Right.
whatever it was they do. So, I mean, you could, I guess by that, you could probably accommodate quite a few. If he described it as 7 to 10 cowboys, and then, of course, Greathouse and Cook, and then himself. So, I don't know. Having walked the ground, and I know you have as well, where you can see some outlines of the foundation. I mean, while it does look kind of small in this diagram, and we got to keep in mind that's just what this is a diagram. I mean, when you're looking at the on the actual grounds, I mean, I could see it being a large one room establishment and then an adjacent room
Hmm.
to it. And again, we don't history doesn't tell us what the adjacent building was either. I mean, that could have been another sleeping quarters. Um, because when you're out walking on the property, you can see where that second building was as well. The best way I can describe it looking at this diagram would have been directly behind the diagram by maybe 50 yards, probably, maybe not even that far. You could clearly see where a second establishment had been dug out, and there was a little bit of ruins there from the rock foundation.
Right.
um, but yeah, so you had the two corrals there. The cool thing is, and I think we can get to some photos here in a minute, but there's still corral posts up there. You can still do the outline of the corral. They were fairly large because, again, there's probably last time I counted, I want to think I counted maybe 14 posts. You can even see where the gate was that allowed you access in and out of the corrals. So yeah, I mean, the thing is that this site's just been untouched. I know we say that a lot, but God, so many of this stuff with the kid is on private property, so it just has not been messed with.
Right.
So, when we went on it, of course, we took you back on it back in last summer, and before that, I've been on it the summer before that when we placed the headstone for Carlisle. But prior to that, man, I want to say Lucas Spears, and we've had Lucas on the show before. I think Lucas was the last one to go on the property prior to that, and he was, a teenager at the time, and he's my age. So I don't know that anybody's really messed with it in 20 years. And
It's wild.
yeah, so there's just nobody on there. So whenever I was trying to get on this property again to find it, because twofold reasons. I wanted to mark the grave, of course, and then we just needed to log where this spot was at. Uh, it took quite a bit of effort. With the help of Lucas, I was able to find roughly where the property was. I actually drove down there with Steve and Doug, and we went to some houses in that area, and they kind of pointed us to the right location. And with a lady's assistance, I got the property owner's name, and he's actually a gentleman that lives in Nebraska, and he just uses a property. He's a pretty wealthy guy, and he uses a property to hunt off of. So I got a hold of him, and we established a time, and we met up there. And Lucas actually met up there with him before that and relocated it, and then of course sent me the coordinates, and then I went out there, and so that's how we actually reestablished where it was at. And again, thankfully to Lucas, had he not remembered the rough area where it was approximately at, I mean, I think he narrowed it down to about a 5 mile radius for me, and then we just went knocking on doors. Had Lucas not remembered that, I want to say Lucas was probably the last person alive at that time that had been on the property. So
Wow.
man, we came real close to just permanently losing where it's at. So that was kind of cool. So props to him for at least remembering that much. Because man, had it not been for Lucas, we probably wouldn't have found it again. But yeah, so let's take a couple other looks. Let's show kind of the people what the actual terrain looks like. It'll give everybody a good idea, and I can kind of point out where the actual house still sits or
Sure.
set. I'm sorry
I
at the
may be
time.
able to unless you're wanting to see like specific images, I may be able to just go back through the slide here.
Yeah. So on this slide, this is going to kind of be showing where the house set. Imagine the diagram we just looked at, but reverse the angle. So that one room establishment that we showed to the side would be at the far end, kind of by the lower bush, and the left
Like
side
about
of the
right here.
corral. Yep, right about there would be a rough location of where that one room would have been, and you can actually see where your mouse is. You can see how the terrain is lowered and dug out, and that's where the building actually set, and then ran parallel close to where the camera would have been taken.
Wow.
Yep, just right where you're at right now.
Yeah.
And you can see through some other photographs that we can look at in a minute, but you can actually see the rubble on the ground where it's set. So yeah, it's very easy once you're actually there and standing on site to see where the actual building was. So yeah, so the road that would have run by that Las Vegas to White Oaks Road that we talked about would have ran right in front of it, very close to where your mouse is right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it would have ran off into the sunset, so to speak. So
It's so beautiful up there, man. It really is.
it is. It's just, you can attest this. It's just so peaceful, man. There's just man, there's nothing
Nothing
around. I
around.
mean, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few ranch homes, within a couple mile radius of there, maybe. As far as town, the next closest thing is Corona, which again is 7 miles to the north of that. And other than that, you have maybe White Oaks 40 miles to the south. So yeah,
Unreal.
there's nothing on that property. There's the guy that owns it runs some cattle on it. Um, there's a cattle trough, if you remember, maybe 100 yards
Mm.
behind where I'm taking
Yep.
that picture at. But that's it, dude. You just stand out there and it's just dead silence. That's why it makes it so easy to just sit there and imagine what that looked like at the time. Just
Absolutely.
not much has changed, man. I mean, the brush has to look the same. You can still see the wagon ruts. So yeah, so this would have been the left side of the building. You can see all that rock and rubble is kind of what was left of the foundation. You can clearly see how the earth cuts into it, where the building was dug out. Um, Obviously the trees and all that in the background, I'm assuming have grown up since then, of course. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that photo because you can see all the rock and rubble, which again shows where the left side of the establishment was.
Hmm.
Yeah, just cool stuff, man. My understanding or my educated guess would have been that Carlisle, when making his escape, would have come out of one of those windows. We know he jumped through a window going towards that road that we described, and my guess is
Which
he
the
would have been
road
cut down. Mhm.
the road is back this way, right?
So the road would have been on the opposite side of the screen where you're at, running parallel to this image. I know it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah,
So
on the front.
would it be running this way?
No, on the front part of the image. So
It
where
would be
we
running like
right
this
now.
way, right?
Yes, sir. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's just some of the interior part of the structure because again, so much foliage has grown up over it. But I shared that photo because again, it just shows part of the foundation
Yeah.
of the building.
Really cool.
Yeah, man, it really was.
Which they burn it down?
Yeah, so of course, Greathouse. I'm sorry, Carlisle. Made his failed escape. Shots were exchanged. Again, who actually killed him? We can get into that more later when we've got a group and we can take some questions. But we know that he was gunned down right outside of that establishment right there. They basically just left him where he lay. And when the next morning, so Cook and I'm sorry, so yeah, Cook and Greathouse. No, I apologize. Steck and Greathouse. I apologize. Left the scene during the shooting. Went to a nearby ranch. It's speculated they probably went to Spencer's Ranch, which is about 3 miles from there. They came back the next morning basically to see what had happened. When they came back, of course, Billy was gone, the posse was gone, and just the house was still there. It had not been burned down yet. So they went and they found Carlisle exactly where he laid. He was frozen stiff. They wrapped him in a blanket and they buried him in a shallow grave right beside the ruins right there. We don't know where exactly, but it was directly beside it. So the following day after that, a posse out of Lincoln arrived, and Deputy John Hurley was heading that posse up, and he came up and. As the story goes, he was infuriated by the fact that Carlisle was killed. So they burned the Greathouse Station Tavern to the ground, including all the adjacent
Mm.
buildings, the corrals, and all that sort of stuff. So at that time, when they did that, they dug up Carlisle and they moved him to his permanent grave. Supposedly, they put him in a box. And of course, his grave now rests on a hill behind this location. I don't know. What would you say? Maybe 100 yards behind where that sits, something like that.
Yeah, and I imagine when you're carrying a headstone, it's a lot farther than it
It
really
was,
is.
it was about 100 miles when you were dragging that headstone. Yes, James.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they buried.
That
So
headstone.
yes, that headstone. Yeah, that very heavy headstone. So yeah, so when they came back the next day, they burned down the tavern. They dug him up and they relocated him up on a hilltop above that, which again is about 100 yards, give or take. So his
And
grave. Sorry, what's up, bud?
what's wild is that, before we marked his grave, these rocks, I mean, they've been there since he was buried, right?
Yeah. So those rocks are actually part of the foundation from the home or the tavern or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, when they reburied him up there, they put him in a box supposedly, and they covered the grave with those rocks, which again were part of the foundation. And up until when we marked his grave with that headstone you see there, it was nothing but just those rocks there. Which thankfully they put the rocks there, making it easy to identify where he was at. But
Absolutely.
yeah, he just sat completely unmarked, just like you see there, minus the headstone, up until 2022 when we put that down. So yeah, and that was just a good day. That was a lot of fun. We had a nice little ceremony there. Uh, Lucas Spear gave a little sermon. We had members of WWHA was there. Cold West was there. Of course, we were there. So yeah, it was a good time. But yeah, so since then, you and I have been back one time since then, and probably not since. So yeah, so here's another photo of where the tavern would have sat. So you can kind of see that rock foundation, or see that square right where your mouse is, just south of that. So yeah, that was kind of weird. That's part of the foundation, but it almost when you're standing there, it almost looked like another grave, or maybe I don't know, maybe that was the original grave location. Again, I'm just guessing, but very clearly it's part of the establishment. You can see off to the right, the rock rubble will continue and go up into the brush there. So again,
Yeah.
it's probably a bigger establishment than I had drawn up. Um, I don't know. I'd probably compare it to maybe a small single wide trailer now in size,
Hmm.
perhaps something like that. Yeah, and that road again, that road that we keep talking about would have run right on the other side of that brush that's in front of the rubble. Yeah, right through there. So yeah, so that somewhere right where your mouse is was probably where Carlisle fell. And then again, they
Mm.
scooped him up and buried him somewhere right around where we're looking right now until he was relocated to where the headstone is. So hopefully that'll
Wow.
kind of give everybody just a little bit of an idea of what the terrain looked like. What this site looks like. Yeah, another one just showing the rubble. This actually, if I'm not mistaken, is the second establishment. Yeah, so this is the second little establishment, for lack of better words, that was burned down, and the trees to the top right of the image by our logo is where the other main tavern set. Yeah, right there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I mean, you can see that's probably, I don't know, 50, 75 yards distance, give or take. I'm not great with measurements, but so yeah, so that would have been one of the second structures that was burned down. I don't know if there were more than that. History doesn't say. It just says there were additional structures. So yeah, so man, that kind of will at least give everybody a little bit of an idea what we're talking about when we dive into it more Sunday. There's three or four different theories behind who killed Carlisle. I don't know that we'll ever know. But
Right.
yeah, maybe we can kind of dive into that a little more. Yeah, so there's more photos, more of the that's the second structure as well, I believe. It kind
This was
of,
just one of my favorite places to visit. This was one of
mhm.
the best places for me that we stopped. So just
Oh yeah, here's
amazing.
a good one. I know. So you can see right there, I took that kind of at a ground level. That's the corral. So you can see right up close on the left of the screen, that's a post right there where you're at. And then if you go
Mhm.
straight out, you can see two more posts straight out
Right
into the
here.
field right there. Yep. And then go to your right. There's another one right there. Um, and then there's more that are a little bit lower to the ground. But yeah,
Yeah.
you could very easily outline and walk off the corral. It was a very odd, like oblong shaped corral. It was not square like you would have thought. It's kind of rounded like I depicted in the diagram. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what was neat, man, is you can still see where the damn corral was. So yeah, and then of course, yeah, another angle. In fact, if you go to the right, you can see where a gate was right there to the right side. Yeah, right there and right there. And then
Mhm.
further up, you could see the corner post that you saw from the other camera angle. Yeah, right
Yeah.
there. So, uh, yeah, man, it was just God. It's just so cool standing there.
It
Again, there's
is.
just nothing around but cattle.
Yeah,
You
it's
can
just so
still
beautiful
see
up there, man.
it is. And I think that, back then, a lot of the terrain was a lot more barren because they used so much of the
Yeah.
lumber, but I don't really think that was the case here. I mean, most of these type of trees or bushes or whatever this is not really conducive for building or whatnot. So my guess is I think this terrain looked exactly like it looks now. I don't think it was any more undergrown or overgrown. I just think it was very similar to this. So
So possibly we might have some drone footage for the live show folks flying
yeah,
around over it.
yep. We've got some drone footage we'll throw up for the live show. Probably I've got some more pictures we can maybe throw up. Yeah, I'll see if we can find him. So I don't know if Lucas was involved in this or not. He might have been, but the site was excavated back in the late 90s. Quite a bit of shell casings were found. Just some bottles and stuff related to the structure. So if I can find those photos, we'll share those as well. Some of those have been online, so some people may have seen those already, but that's kind of cool to see.
Mhm.
But yeah, the drone footage will really give a good overlay of what the area looked like. Yeah, so we'll bring that to everybody. And then, like I said, I'd really like to get some people's thoughts on who they think killed Carlisle, because you've got two or three sources that say it was Billy. You've got a couple sources that are fairly believable that say it was the posse. So I don't know, man. That's
Yeah.
one of the bigger mysteries. We always talk about those events that we wish we could go back in time and witness to get the answers, and I think this is definitely one of them because Man, I don't know. I don't know. So, but yeah, so that's a Greathouse Tavern. We've got so many more historic sites to show, but hopefully we can kind of knock them out one at a time and give people an idea what this stuff looks like. Because
Yeah,
it's
and
it's just hard to get to it.
folks we'll let them watch this and get geared up for Sunday's show.
Cool. Yeah, let's put it out. Everybody think of what questions you got, and we'll talk about it again Sunday.
All right, we'll see y'all in a few days.
Cool. Take care, guys.
See ya.